Today's video is about a no-fail alcohol ink technique that will give you stunning results every time. I saw this done recently on another channel, but the results weren't shown because of the time it takes to dry. So naturally, I had to try it myself a few times with different variations to see how it all ends. Let me show you. For my first try, I've got a 9 by 12 inch sheet of Yupo paper in a shallow box on my desk. And I've got a large 9 by 12 stencil with a gorgeous tile pattern. This will give me a nice big piece that I can cut down for multiple cards, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I've got 4 colors of Ranger alcohol inks, and I'm just squirting them all over the top of this. I started with a deep yellow, and then I moved on to a green. I'm trying to create some pattern paper for Christmas cards that's mainly red, but I do like to have some variation in the color, with pinkier areas and some oranger areas, so I put these other colors down first. Next, I used a bright fuchsia, and finally a red. Then I set it aside to dry. Here's how it looks after half an hour, and you can see that the ink is still really moving quite a bit. If you lift the stencil now, you'll lose all the pattern. You can probably get away with less ink than I used here, but I wanted to be really sure that I got good coverage. There were two, downsides, I guess, to this technique, and one is the time that it takes to dry. This one took about 3 hours to get to this, but isn't it stunning? The second downside is cleanup, and I'll be showing you how I managed that in a few minutes, so be sure to stick around for that. Next, I wanted a green panel. This time I used a different stencil, and I tried out alcohol pearl inks. These inks have pearlescent pigment or something in them, and you really have to shake them well until you hear that ball rattling around in the bottle to know that you've got it mixed properly. I found these inks trickier to get out of the bottle. I think maybe they're a little thicker due to the pearlescent stuff, plus sometimes the little balls would get stuck in the bottom of the nozzles. Another thing I noticed right away is that they didn't move or spread at the same rate as the regular alcohol inks did, and they didn't seem to blend together quite the same way either. Here's how this one looked after half an hour, and to be honest, I didn't trust it to blend any more than that, so I added some of that regular green alcohol ink and I let it dry until it looked like this. Then I did one more panel, a smaller one this time, with a 6 by 6 inch stencil. This time I tried Copic Ink Refills, which should behave like the original alcohol inks. This time I was going for a golden or yellow panel, and I used different shades, letting them mix. Here's how this one looked after half an hour, and then I let it dry. Then I had this idea that I could try layering up the pattern by offsetting that stencil and adding more ink. But when I did it, everything reactivated, and I ended up with still just the one pattern of the stencil. So that's something to remember, although I do think it will look pretty if it's shifted with ink blending. Anyway, here's how this one finished up. Next, I was really torn. I wanted to get as many cards out of these panels as I could, but I also didn't even want to cut into them, especially that red one. So I compromised and made 8 cards with ornaments and 1 card with a larger red panel. I started by cutting the diagonal stripe cover plate from a Jillian Vance design 8 times from white cardstock, and then I popped out the stripes. Although if you've got them all there, you could leave them in for more subtle texture in the background. I even tried lining 2 of them up and popping out the stripes together, and that worked pretty well. Then I used liquid glue to adhere each one to a white card base. You could put adhesive sheets or wide, strong double-sided tape on the back of the panels before die cutting instead of liquid glue. That would definitely be quicker, but I like the forgivability of the liquid glue. I get some wiggle time to make sure that the panel is lined up straight. Off camera, I used this vintage ornaments die set along with the stitch dot in and out circle set to cut some ornaments from my alcohol ink panels. I also cut the ornament toppers and some of the sentiments from silver mirror cardstock, and those little toppers gave me some little silver dots which I saved and used as embellishments later. I started by gluing all the toppers to my ornaments. Both of these ornaments have a pretty stitch detail around the edges that gives a really nice finished look. I arranged them onto my card and I glued them flat, but of course you could pop them up with foam tape for more dimension if you wanted to. I added the sentiment to the red ornament, and then I pulled over those little silver dots and I added them around the card front for a little extra sparkle. I cut some of the yellow ornaments with the smaller circle, and some, like this one, with the smaller ornament die. There are actually 4 ornament dies that you can use to get 4 different sizes, or to cut frames to make them into shakers. There's so many possibilities with this set. I finished 8 of these cards very quickly, and of course you could use pattern paper or mirror or glitter cardstock to make them if you can't bring yourself to cut into your alcohol ink panels. My compromise was to make one card with a larger piece of the red panel, and I trimmed it down and added a die-cut Merry Christmas from Holiday Scripty Greetings die set in that same silver cardstock. I also cut 3 Christmas trees from the Sweet Gingerbread add-on die set from the scraps of my green panel, and what I love about this tree is that you can easily just trim it down so that your trees are all at different heights. I glued 2 of them next to each other, and then I popped the shortest one up, slightly offset in between them. I used the little dots die from that same die set, and I cut some ornaments for my trees from the red scraps. Oh my goodness, I love this card. That rich background and the classic Christmas colors have a traditional feel with an unexpected twist. Okay, now for the cleanup. I looked for some ideas on YouTube, but most people who are cleaning their stencils seem to be using acrylic paint, not alcohol ink, so I did my best, but if you've got some advice, I'd love to hear it. My first step in cleaning was to try to use some of the ink still on the stencils by misting them with rubbing alcohol and getting another print from them. If you're doing this, please make sure you're in a ventilated area and never spray blending solution, since it has some kind of resin in it. I forgot to turn my camera on for my first one, but here it is, and there was still so much ink on the stencil that I misted it again to try for a second print. Here's the second print, which is less intense but still very pretty. And here's how the green one turned out. Now, welcome to my kitchen sink. I do have a pan of warm soapy water next to me, but I know that's not going to remove alcohol ink, so I tried a couple of things. First, I misted the stencils some more with that rubbing alcohol, and then I tried rubbing it with a paper towel, and quite a bit of it came off. Then I started pouring the rubbing alcohol over top of the stencils, but I just didn't have enough to soak them in it. But again, more of the ink came off. In the end, most of it came off the red stencil, which had actually been sitting for a number of days, and I had absolutely no trouble at all cleaning this smaller yellow one. It was still pretty fresh. But I did have trouble getting the alcohol pearls off the green stencil. I even tried hand sanitizer, but I think some of those stains are probably there to stay. They shouldn't impact my ink blending at all, so I'm not too worried about it. And lots of mixed media artists have very stained stencils, but I know many of us card makers like our tools to be very clean. If you're one of those, I would just recommend cleaning up right away rather than waiting days like I did. And here's a little bonus. I've heard that there's a Yupo alternative called craft plastic that's much cheaper, so I ordered it and it came just before I was finishing this video. I tried it out with some Copic refills and another stencil. This time I tried some pale wintry colors and a stencil with some breezy looking swirls. Here's how it looked after half an hour, and here's the finished panel. That's going to be at least 4 more cards for my stash, and that's just one of the benefits of using large stencils. Click right here for even more ideas for using these large stencils when you're card making. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time!